My name is Emily Carter. I was the valedictorian at my university, and my parents promised they'd be at my graduation. They never showed up. But when the school announced my achievement publicly, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. If you've ever been sidelined by your own family, share your story in the comments. The morning of my graduation started with confirmation, not doubt. My parents had said they were coming. They said it more than once. There were texts, a forwarded email with the time circled, even a short call where my mother told me what color she planned to wear. I set 2 tickets on the kitchen counter in Madison and left them there while I showered, as if proximity alone could make people show up. My phone buzzed while I was tying my shoes. One message from my mom. Family stuff came up. This is more important. No apology, no question mark, just a statement, delivered at exactly the same minute the university asked guests to start checking in. I stared at the screen long enough for it to go dark, then picked up the tickets anyway and slid them into my bag. Habit is a hard thing to break. The drive to campus was uneventful. Parking attendants waved cars through. Volunteers smiled and pointed. Inside the hall, people hugged, adjusted gowns, passed programs down rows. I found my assigned seat near the front and saw the 2 empty chairs beside it, the ones reserved for parents of the valedictorian. The program had my name marked with a small star, neat and confident, like nothing could interfere with it. Messages kept coming, updates really, a photo of a living room, a line about how tense things were, another reminder that family sometimes needs flexibility. Each text arrived as if I were standing by for instructions, not about to graduate. At the check-in table, a staff member scanned my badge and hesitated. "Your parents aren't here yet?" she asked. "They won't be," I said. She nodded, typed something, and slid a clipboard toward me. I signed to adjust the guest list. The pen scratched louder than it should have. Behind her, a printer kept working, churning out name tags. One dropped into the tray, unused. Parents of valedictorian. It sat there, official and pointless. An automated email hit my phone while I waited backstage. Subject line, feature scheduled. It thanked me for my cooperation and confirmed the valedictorian announcement would post after the ceremony. No one had asked who would be in the audience. The dean lined us up and gave last-minute instructions. Someone joked about tripping on the stairs. Laughter moved through the line and stopped before it reached me. My phone vibrated again, harder this time, as if urgency could travel through fabric. The music started. Names were called. When the announcer reached the star beside mine, my phone lit up inside my pocket, buzzing without pause as I stepped forward and heard my name fill the room. The photo went up before my gown was back on the hanger. A wide shot of the stage, my name under it, and a caption that congratulated the department, the faculty, and the families who supported us. Comments followed quickly. "Congratulations! So proud!" Someone asked where my parents were. Another asked if they missed it. By noon, messages arrived from classmates and a few professors. None were rude. Most were careful, which somehow made them sharper. A professor from my methods course wrote, "Beautiful ceremony. I hope your family enjoyed it." A classmate added a smiley face and asked if my parents had left early. Each reply took longer to type than it should have. The version my parents told moved faster than mine. An aunt called to say she heard I changed the time last minute. A cousin texted that it was hard for them to rearrange everything when I was so busy. The words came prepackaged, polished enough to travel. By the end of the afternoon, it sounded like a scheduling issue I created and failed to fix. The next day, the department hallway felt narrower. People smiled and kept walking. A few stopped, leaned in, and lowered their voices. "Everything okay at home?" someone asked. "It was a busy day," I said. That answer seemed to satisfy the process. The conversation moved on. A staff member congratulated me again and added, "Families get complicated," as if it were a neutral observation. Nothing required correction, nothing invited detail. I met Marcus Hill at the coffee shop near campus where faculty pretended not to check email. He listened without interrupting, hands around a chipped mug. When I finished, he nodded once. "Keep everything," he said. "What do you mean?" Emails, texts, the RSVP, dates and times. I'm not trying to prove anything. Then don't, he said. Just don't delete it. That was the closest thing to advice. No reassurance followed. We talked about the weather and an upcoming syllabus revision. When we stood to leave, he added, "Systems care about records, not explanations." Back at my desk, the inbox felt heavier. I searched for the original invitation and found the confirmation thread. There it was, 2 weeks before the ceremony. RSVP, yes. Both names, time-stamped and polite. The message hadn't changed since it was sent. Whatever story was moving around now, it wasn't an accident. An automated note landed minutes later from the University Communications Office. Subject line, Valedictorian Feature Quote Request. It included a sample paragraph and a placeholder where a family quote would go. The template assumed pride and presence. The system had already decided the tone. A call came through from my mother while I was reading it. "You need to clear this up," she said. "With who?" "Everyone. People think we didn't care." "The program went out," I said. "The ceremony happened." "You know that's not what this is about." "Then what is it?" A pause followed, long enough to count. "Just say there was confusion," she said. "Say we tried." The request wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Another message followed, this one asking me to send a short note she could forward. The phrasing was already there. All I had to do was agree. Instead, I reopened the confirmation email and forwarded it to myself. Then I flagged the communications message and left it unanswered. The phone buzzed again, ignored this time. That evening, messages stacked without asking permission. A former lab partner sent a screenshot of a group chat. Someone wrote that it was strange my parents skipped such a big day. Another replied that families have priorities. The explanation kept smoothing itself. At the grocery store, the cashier recognized my name from the program photo and said congratulations, then asked if my folks were still in town. I said no and paid. A neighbor knocked to drop off mail delivered to the wrong box and mentioned seeing the post online. Every interaction stayed polite, brief, and slightly tilted, like furniture moved an inch to the left. Nothing exploded, everything shifted. By night, the narrative felt settled enough to repeat itself, and my silence helped it along. That detail mattered because it explained why no one asked me directly. It kept moving without me, efficient and calm, like a form already approved and filed away, with no appeal attached at all there. Late that afternoon, a new email arrived from the dean's office. It thanked me for my patience and asked me to attend a review meeting regarding the feature. The calendar invite attached showed a block of time and a note in bold about responsiveness. I hovered over the reply button, the deadline ticking down in the corner, and began typing. The call log filled up before breakfast. Missed calls stacked from the same 2 numbers, spaced close enough to suggest coordination. I set the phone face down and opened my laptop instead. The RSVP thread was still open from the night before, sitting where I'd left it. Clicking through the message history showed something new. The confirmation hadn't just been sent once. It had been opened, refreshed, and edited from the same household device over several days. Nothing dramatic, just enough activity to prove attention. Scrolling further pulled up the system metadata, date, time, device ID. The last interaction landed minutes before my mother's message about family stuff. That timing lined up too neatly with the communications email confirming the valedictorian feature had been scheduled. The overlap wasn't subtle, it was exact. The message from my mother looked different after that. It hadn't been a last-minute apology or a spontaneous problem. It was a withdrawal. Clean, final, sent once the public part was locked in. The phone flipped itself back over when it vibrated again. "You're humiliating us," my father said when I answered. I didn't say anything. "You didn't have to," he said. "People are talking." "About what?" "About us not being there." "That happened." A sharp breath followed. "You could have handled this privately," he said. "The ceremony wasn't private." Another call came in while he was still speaking. I ended the first and watched the screen light up again. The messages changed tone as the morning went on. Less explanation, more pressure. One mentioned money. Another reminded me what support had looked like before. None asked what I needed. An email draft sat open on my screen while the calls kept coming. It was addressed to the dean. Short, direct. I asked that the feature remain as scheduled and that no edits be made on my behalf. No blame, no context, just a request. Before sending it, a notification popped up. An automated reply had gone out to my parents from the communications office. It thanked them for their feedback and explained the changes to scheduled features followed a review process. The message was polite and impersonal. It read like a receipt. The calls slowed after that. The dean replied before lunch. He acknowledged my request and confirmed the post would stay live. Then he asked a question that didn't try to soften anything. "Would you like us to note that your family was unable to attend?" The cursor blinked at the end of the sentence. No suggested wording, no assumption, just an option. The phone buzzed again. This time it was my mother. "You didn't have to do this," she said. "Do what?" "Make it public." "The school did," I said. "You could have stopped it." "You asked me to." A pause followed, then a new angle. "You're being difficult." The word landed without heat. It was familiar, useful when something didn't bend. "I need you to fix this," she said. "With who?" "With everyone." The call ended without waiting for an answer. Another message came through, this one longer. It explained how fragile things were right now, how a simple clarification would help, how family should come before recognition. The argument didn't change, it just grew. The inbox refreshed again. A follow-up from the communications office asked if I'd like to provide a quote instead of a family statement. The template thanked me in advance for my time. I typed back to the dean. "Please don't add anything," I wrote. The reply came quickly. "Understood," he said. The phone buzzed again. I let it ring. A voicemail followed, then another. Each one raised the stakes without adding facts. When I checked the messages later, the language had shifted toward consequences. Support would be reconsidered. Lines would be drawn. The afternoon moved forward anyway. Students crossed the quad. Faculty meetings started and ended. The feature stayed live. The comments kept coming. Some congratulated me. Others speculated. No one asked for clarification directly. Another automated email arrived near the end of the day. It confirmed the feature would remain unchanged and thanked me for my cooperation. The system closed the loop without emotion. The feature went live before noon. My name sat at the top of the university website, paired with a short bio and a photo from the ceremony. It spread the way institutional news always does, shared by departments, reposted by alumni accounts, archived without ceremony. The caption didn't mention family. It didn't need to. My phone started ringing anyway. The first email came from the communications office. Polite, neutral. It said they'd received a request asking for the post to be removed due to family privacy concerns. The phrase sounded official enough to slow things down. A second message followed, this one from an administrator, asking if I was available to discuss the matter later that afternoon. Calls from my parents picked up in pace. Voicemails stacked. Each one referenced the post, the embarrassment, the risk. The words privacy and exposure appeared more than once. It was clear they weren't speaking to me anymore. They were addressing the situation. An hour later, another email landed. This one came from HR. It explained that, due to ongoing concerns connected to public attention, my teaching assistant contract would be temporarily paused. The phrasing avoided blame. It emphasized care. A sentence noted the pause would last until family-related issues settled. I read it twice. The contract was a few months old, signed and filed. The pay covered rent. The role anchored my next step. Now it was suspended without a meeting, justified by a situation I hadn't created. A message from my father arrived almost immediately after. "We had to do something," he wrote. "You left us no choice." The explanation followed, longer this time. He attached the original RSVP email, the same one I'd found days earlier. In his version, it proved confusion, a misunderstanding. He claimed I'd changed plans without notice, forcing them into a position that required intervention. The document looked official enough to pass at a glance. Context was missing. Timing was gone. The phone rang again. I answered because the administrator had called earlier, and I thought it might be her. Instead, my mother spoke. "They're saying this could affect your job," she said. "That already happened." "We didn't want that," she said. "But you escalated things." "I didn't post anything." "You didn't stop it." The call ended when I didn't respond fast enough. I walked to campus without checking messages. The department building was active, business as usual. People passed with folders and coffee. A few nodded. No one stopped me. The administrator met me outside her office and closed the door behind us. She explained the process. A complaint had been filed. Legal had to review it. Until then, it was safer to pause anything connected to public representation. She said she understood how frustrating it must feel. Her tone stayed careful. Systems speak best that way. Afterward, Marcus Hill caught me in the hallway. He'd already heard. "They only move when they lose control," he said. "What control?" "Of how they look," he said. "This was fine when it stayed small." He didn't offer a solution. He didn't suggest pushing back. He just named the pattern and let it sit there between us. Another email arrived before I reached my desk. It confirmed the review was underway and reminded me not to engage publicly while it continued. The word engage covered everything from interviews to social posts to replies. Silence was framed as cooperation. My phone buzzed again. I didn't pick it up. At my desk, the screen filled with overlapping threads. HR communications, the dean's office. Each one referenced the others without resolving anything. The post stayed live, but comments were turned off. The feature existed and didn't at the same time. A final message arrived from my parents, shorter than the rest. "Please don't make this worse." I closed the laptop. The motion felt decisive even though nothing else changed. The conference room was unlocked because someone forgot to lock it. The lights stayed on even after hours, humming without asking why. I sat at the long table with my laptop open and no meetings scheduled. The HR email about my suspended contract sat unread beside a draft I hadn't answered. Outside the glass wall, cleaners moved past without looking in. Nothing was urgent except the fact that everything was. Silence had always felt like maturity to me. I learned early that asking less kept things smoother. When plans shifted, I adjusted. When feelings were inconvenient, I filed them away. That approach worked in classrooms and offices. It never worked with my parents, but I kept applying it anyway. They showed up when there was something to be seen. Photos, programs, announcements, anything that made a good impression. I called that support. What it really was conditional presence. I hadn't asked for clear commitments because I didn't want to sound demanding. I told myself family would understand without being told. The cost of that belief was sitting in a room with a suspended job and unanswered messages. Blame didn't help, but clarity did. The goal wasn't to argue with my parents anymore. The goal was to put records where opinions couldn't reach them. Systems didn't care about tone or history. They cared about logs, timestamps, and access. Marcus knocked once and stepped inside without waiting. He looked at the screen, then at the email headers. "You don't need to convince anyone," he said. "You need to request the logs." "Which logs?" "The RSVP system and the publication schedule," he said. "Ask for access history and edit trails." He named the department that handled it and the administrator responsible. There was no promise attached, just a path. Winning wouldn't repair anything personal. It might label me difficult or dramatic. The academic world pretends neutrality, but it remembers. Still, the alternative was letting someone else define the record. I opened a new message and followed the internal request form. The language was precise by design. I asked for access logs, edit histories, and timestamps associated with my RSVP and feature. The recipient field filled with the correct office. My finger hovered, then pressed send. The room stayed the same as the request left my outbox. Outside, a cart rolled past again. My phone lit up with another call. I left it unanswered and watched the sent confirmation appear. The process had started, and that was enough to keep my hands steady. The conference room clock clicked toward closing time. Email notifications slowed, then stopped. I packed my bag carefully, as if order might translate elsewhere. Marcus paused at the door. "This won't be fast," he said. "I know," I said. He left without another word. The building began its evening routine. Lights dimmed in offices down the hall. An automated announcement reminded staff to log out. I shut the laptop and stood. The request was out there now, moving through channels I couldn't see. That was the point. My phone buzzed again, insistent. I didn't check who it was. The bag strap slid onto my shoulder. I turned off the light and pulled the door closed behind me. The hallway smelled faintly of cleaner and paper. Footsteps echoed from somewhere below. I walked past offices with nameplates I recognized. Each door was shut, business completed for the day. The elevator took its time arriving. My phone buzzed again. I pressed the button and kept my eyes forward. Another email notification appeared on the lock screen. It was the automated acknowledgement from Records. "Request received," it read. "Estimated response time, 5 business days." The doors opened. I stepped in and turned as the doors slid together. The phone buzzed again, longer this time. I let it buzz. The elevator began to move. My hand rested on the bag strap as the floor numbers changed. Another call came through. I watched the screen light up and go dark. The building hummed, indifferent. Somewhere, a server logged my request. That mattered more than any conversation waiting on the other end. The elevator slowed. I stayed still as it descended, counting nothing, answering no one. The doors opened to the ground floor. Cold air rushed in from outside. I stepped out without checking my phone. Another vibration followed me across the lobby. I pushed through the exit and felt the night settle. The phone kept buzzing in my hand. I didn't stop walking. The request was filed, the clock was running, and the calls could wait. I headed toward the parking lot as another call came in. I kept going, keys already in my hand, letting the phone buzz while the system did what it was built to do without me saying anything at all. The records office responded on the 5th business day, exactly as promised. The email was short and procedural, with a secure link and a reminder about confidentiality. I opened it at my kitchen table and scrolled slowly, not because I was nervous, but because the details were dense. Timestamps, IP addresses, access logs, the kind of information that didn't care who anyone was. The first entry showed my parents' RSVP, unchanged. The next entry showed activity days later, access from the same household network, views, edits, notes. Then a separate thread appeared, this one tied to the communications department. A request had been sent before graduation asking to remove their names from any public-facing material. The reason listed wasn't family conflict. It was to avoid potential impact on professional obligations. That line sat there, clean and impersonal. No mention of me, no mention of the ceremony. Just reputation management, submitted early enough to shape the rollout if it had worked. The message about family stuff landed in a different light after that. It hadn't been an apology or a crisis. It was cover. The calls afterward made sense too. They didn't start until the post went live. The panic wasn't about hurting me. It was about losing control. Another document followed. An internal note from an administrator, not one I recognized. It mentioned a conversation and suggested flexibility. Someone had smoothed the path. Not officially, just enough to help. The phone rang while I was still reading. "We need to talk," my mother said. "I've seen the logs," I said. A pause. "That's not what this is about," she said. "It is," I said. "You're making assumptions." I'm reading timestamps, her voice tightened. You don't understand how this looks. I do. You could ruin things for us. The call ended without a goodbye. An hour later, an email arrived from the university's legal office. It attached a formal letter from my parents' attorney requesting that all promotional content involving me be paused due to privacy concerns. The language was careful. The threat was implied. The records I'd requested were now under review. Access was restricted pending legal assessment. The feature disappeared by the afternoon. The link redirected to a general page. Comments stopped. Messages slowed. Without the post, the story flattened. People assumed something had gone wrong on my end. The pause read like guilt. Another email from HR confirmed my contract remained suspended until the matter resolved. The phrasing stayed neutral. No timelines, no reassurances. Marcus stopped by my office doorway later that day. He didn't ask questions. They're not scared of you, he said. I know. They're scared of the system, he said. That's worse. It's consistent, he said. The next message came from my father, this one longer than the rest. It explained how unfair this was, how much pressure they were under, how they'd always supported me. The word ungrateful didn't appear, but it hovered nearby. I didn't respond. The records stayed locked. The post stayed hidden. Without proof in public view, the narrative tilted away from me. Silence did its work again, this time against me. That night, another email arrived, marked urgent. It announced a mandatory meeting the following morning with the dean, legal counsel, and communications leadership. Attendance required. The subject line included my name and the words immediate review. I added it to my calendar and closed the laptop. The phone buzzed once more on the table. I watched it light up and go still again. The logs were real. The letters were real. The system had paused everything, including the truth, to protect itself. A meeting invitation blinked on my screen, waiting for confirmation, as I reached for the mouse and hovered over the accept button, knowing the next day would decide which version of the record survived. The conference room was already full when I arrived. The dean sat at the head of the table with legal counsel beside him. A representative from communications flipped through a folder. My parents sat across from me, close together, papers stacked neatly in front of them. No one spoke until everyone was seated. The dean nodded in my direction. "Emily, you asked for this review," he said. "You may begin." There was no reason to start with feelings. I opened my laptop and connected it to the screen. "I'm going to walk through a timeline," I said. No commentary, just records. The first slide showed the RSVP confirmation. Names, date, time. I pointed out the timestamp and moved on. The next slide showed access logs tied to the same household network. Multiple views, edits. Each entry aligned to specific dates. These interactions occurred after the RSVP, I said. They came from the same device. My father leaned forward. "We were just checking details," he said. I didn't respond. The next slide appeared. "This is an email sent to the communications department," I said. "It requests removal of names from public materials." My mother shook her head. "That was about privacy," she said. "We didn't want attention." Legal counsel raised a hand slightly. "Let her continue," he said. The timestamps followed. The request had been sent before graduation, before the post, before the ceremony even started. The communications representative cleared her throat. "This request was logged and noted," she said. "It wasn't approved." I advanced to the next slide. An internal confirmation email filled the screen. Subject line visible. Urgent, reputation risk. One of the board members read it aloud by mistake. "Reputation risk," he said. The room paused. My parents looked down at their papers. "That email," I said, "was sent before the ceremony. It references professional concerns, not family privacy." My father spoke again. "You're twisting this," he said. "We were trying to protect ourselves." "From what?" the dean asked. No answer followed. Legal counsel leaned back in his chair. "The university has the right to feature academic achievements," he said, Emily is a public honoree in this context. He turned a page. There's no legal basis to suppress the post. The communications representative nodded. We followed procedure, she said. The content was appropriate. The dean looked toward the administrative liaison listed on the email chain. We'll need an explanation for the preliminary recommendation, he said. The liaison shifted in her seat. I thought I was helping, she said. I didn't realize. That will be addressed separately, the dean said. I closed the laptop and waited. The evidence had done its work. No one asked about intentions anymore. The conversation moved to process, policy, and accountability. After a brief pause, the dean spoke again. The feature will be restored, he said, immediately and without edits. He turned to me. Your contract suspension will be lifted pending HR review. My mother reached for her phone. My father stared at the table. The board member who'd read the subject line earlier cleared his throat. For the record, he said, this could have been avoided. No one disagreed. The meeting ended without ceremony. Chairs moved back, papers were gathered. The communications representative confirmed the post would be live within the hour. As people stood, my parents approached. We didn't think it would go this far, my mother said. I picked up my bag. It didn't have to, I said. The dean thanked everyone and left with legal counsel. The room emptied quickly after that. My parents lingered, waiting for something else to happen. A notification buzzed on my phone. The feature link was active again. I glanced at the screen, then slipped the phone back into my pocket as the door closed behind the last board member and the decision settled into place. The feature didn't just come back, it traveled farther than it had the first time. Departments reshared it. Alumni newsletters picked it up. A faculty account quoted it with a short note about academic persistence. The comments reopened and filled in with congratulations that didn't circle around absence anymore. People asked different questions now, not about why my parents missed the ceremony, but why they weren't mentioned at all. That shift reached them faster than anything I could have said. A distant relative texted to ask if everything was okay because the article didn't mention family support. A former colleague of my father's left a comment under the post congratulating me and adding, "Proud parents must be thrilled." The tone stayed polite. The implication didn't. The phone rang that evening. I answered because the number wasn't theirs. Your contract paperwork is ready, HR said. We'll need your signature tomorrow. The next morning, I signed it in the same office where it had been paused. The administrator smiled and slid the folder across the desk. Glad we could clear that up, she said. So am I said. No one mentioned the delay. No one needed to. The system had corrected itself without commentary. My parents tried again that afternoon. The message came through as a group text. We should talk privately, my mother wrote. This got out of hand. I read it once and set the phone down. Another message followed a few minutes later, this one softer. We don't want things to stay like this. There was no reply from me. Not because I was angry, because answering would restart something that no longer needed momentum. A week later, I cleared out the apartment. The lease was ending anyway. The move had been planned before all of this. Boxes lined the hallway. The last things left were the small items that didn't seem urgent until they were the only ones remaining. The tickets sat in the drawer where I'd left them. 2 stiff rectangles, creased along the edges from being handled and put back. Parents of Valedictorian printed across the top. I didn't tear them up. I didn't keep them either. They went into the recycling bin with the rest of the paper I didn't need. An email notification popped up while I was closing the drawer. It was from the alumni office. Would you like to receive updates intended for parents of graduates? It asked. There were 2 buttons below, yes and no. I deleted it without clicking either. Marcus stopped by later to return a book I'd lent him. He looked at the boxes and nodded. Looks lighter, he said. It is, I said. He didn't ask about my parents. He didn't need to. He wished me luck and left without ceremony. The last conversation with my parents came as a voicemail. My father spoke carefully, like he was recording something that might be played back. "We're sorry this became public," he said. "We hope you understand why we acted the way we did." He didn't apologize for missing the ceremony. He didn't mention the requests or the letters. The focus stayed where it always had. I listened once and archived it. The day I handed over the keys, the landlord asked if everything had gone smoothly. "Yes," I said. "Graduation went well?" he asked. "It did," I said. He nodded and took the keys from my hand. The exchange took seconds. Outside, the street looked the same. Cars passed. Someone argued about parking. A neighbor dragged a suitcase down the sidewalk. My phone buzzed once, then stopped. I didn't check it. The screen stayed dark. The new place was across town. Smaller. Cheaper. The first thing I carried in was a box labeled Office. It went straight to the desk. The contract folder slid into a drawer. The laptop followed. Another email arrived while I was standing there. This one thanked me for my participation in the graduation feature and asked if I'd like to nominate family members for future recognition. I closed the app. The door shut behind me with a soft click. The lock turned easily. My phone stayed on silent as I stepped away from it, leaving it face down on the counter while I moved deeper into the apartment, hands-free, letting the last unanswered message wait where it was without pulling me back.